You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. In the latest novel from best-selling author Cynthia Sweeney, one woman's affair has long-lasting consequences for the rest of her family. The book is titled Lake Effect. Nina Larkin is living in Rochester in 1977 when a friend hands her a copy of a spicy book, The Joy of Sex. Suddenly, Nina begins to question her marriage to Sam, which has been lacking in passion for many years. So she starts an affair with a handsome neighbor, Finn. He owns the big grocery store chain in town and is in an unhappy marriage with a woman named Honey. One day, Finn and Nina elope, heading to the Dominican Republic for a quickie divorce and remarriage. Their kids are left behind to deal with the fallout and the gossip. Nina has two teenage daughters, Clara and Bridie. Finn has a son named Dune and a daughter named Fern. What Nina and Finn don't know is that their kids have been falling in love. Dune and Clara have been secretly dating. In the wake of this affair, Dune breaks up with Clara, leaving her heartbroken. Years later, now living in New York City, Clara still can't manage to forgive her mother for the affair, even though everyone else seems to have moved on. And when Clara receives a shocking invitation, she might have to finally confront the past she's been clinging on to for so long. Lake Effect was our April Get Lit with All of It book club selection. I began my conversation with Cynthia Sweeney by asking her what the inspiration was for this novel.
The original seed of the idea came from me going home one weekend to visit my parents in Rochester, New York, and my mom telling me about a friend of hers who I knew who was helping his 80-something mother with estate planning. And she was doing this because her husband had recently died. Her husband was her second husband, someone she had had an affair with and left her first family for. And so she wasn't just doing estate planning for her children, she was doing it for his children. And it was absolutely chaotic. There was so much anger, arguments, resentment. There was like significant resources in the family. And there was a real battle that was not about the money at all. It was about everyone just being still so angry at what had happened to them when they were younger. And I just thought to myself, my God, being a parent, it never ends. Like it never stops. You're in your 80s and you're trying to like plan for your kids' futures when you're gone, and they're still so mad at you. It's something you did 30 years ago. Let's say a big thing you did, but still, I just thought, I don't know, when do you ever in your children's eyes get to be a full human? And that was the kernel of the idea.
It's a Catholic enclave that you set the story in. Why did you want to set it in a Catholic enclave, and what did you want to examine about Catholicism?
I mean, I think the easiest answer is that I grew up in a very Catholic community. I went to Catholic school my entire life. And so I know that world, and I know that world in Rochester, and I know that world particularly in Rochester in the 70s very well. I am the exact age as Clara in the book. So in 1977, I was a senior in high school. And I was, it was an interesting time to be in a Catholic community because the church was changing a lot. My parents were very progressive, very liberal, very activist kind of Catholics. And I liked that part of the church, but I also really disliked so much of it. And I think that as a teenager, I was trying to understand what parts of Catholicism and organized religion in general made sense to me and which didn't. And I also was very interested in how people's belief systems, how that governed their reaction to things they weren't expecting to happen, either in their lives or in the lives of their friends.
I would have to imagine in the 70s, I was 10, it was a big deal if you got divorced.
It was a big deal. And I remember vividly when my friends' parents started getting divorced, and I remember when my parents' friends started getting divorced, and it felt very threatening to me and very destabilizing. And and it was just, there was so much drama and so much judgment. And I couldn't help but notice and really take in that no matter the circumstances of the breakup, the women were judged much more harshly in every scenario.
What did you want to capture about Rochester in the 70s?
I think that Rochester is so interesting to me because when I moved to New York City, which I did the second I could, like 12 minutes after graduating from college, I learned that Rochester isn't really upstate New York. Like I would, people would ask me where I was from, and I'd say upstate and Rochester, and they'd be like, "That's not up." Like in downstate New York, upstate ends at Albany, and then to the left, there's just nothing. It's just snow until you get to Niagara Falls. And it took moving to New York for me to understand how Midwestern that Rochester is, like how it's really, really. I also, when I moved here, people kept asking me if I was from Chicago because the accent starts around Syracuse and really picks up in Rochester and then makes its way to Chicago. And so it's of New York State, but it's very different from a lot of New York State. And it's a sophisticated community with a great history of really interesting Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, George Eastman, people who changed the world in really significant ways. And it has a very, it maybe takes itself a little too seriously, and it's very smug. It's a very smug kind of town. And I wanted to write a little bit about that.
The 60s and 70s were cultural turning points for characters in your book, and now they've arrived in the 70s. Sam, who goes to San Francisco, he's closeted and he tries to fit in with younger people. That seems harder than being gay to him. What did you want to examine about the cultural shifts that happened during this time?
I think just how destabilizing it was to everyone, how it really threatened your sense of security and safety. And I thought about that a lot when I was writing about Nina, which was that, and I just think that I saw this happening with my mom and her friends, where you thought that you'd set up your life according to the way you were supposed to, and then the world changed around you, and all of a sudden there were opportunities and options that previously were not on the table. But you are in this box, so how do you get some of those things without blowing everything up? And I think that's also true for Sam when he has the opportunity to live as a gay man. He can't. I mean, he can't. He doesn't have the skills. And I have one friend in particular whose father was closeted his entire life, and she said to him at some point, he kind of got caught. And she said, "Well, Dad, do you just want to get a divorce? Do you just want to be gay?" And he was like, "No, I want my wife, I want my house, I want my kids." Like it wasn't even, I don't even think he would have had a clue how to do that,
So for people who have read the book, or who haven't read the book, I should say, is Finn and Nina are neighbors. They have an affair. They run off to get a divorce in the Dominican Republic. But then they come back and they have a very typical marriage with ups and downs. Why did you want their marriage to be typical?
Because I think that's what would happen. I think that, well, I think in some ways I just wanted to show that they were just choosing to have a fulfilling, happy life. And not so much rejecting the social mores or anything, but just actually choosing happiness. Like, I can't stay in this marriage anymore. I am desperately unhappy. And I see a chance to be happy, and I have to take it. And so I just wanted them to be happy, but not unreasonably happy. Like, being married is sometimes happy and sometimes hard. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted them to be normal.
The book switches perspectives. Who was difficult to write?
Oh, Sam was difficult for me to write. because he's such a self-contained person. And I think he was the hardest. Finn a little bit, because he's just like a big character, a big presence. But I'm not sure how much is going on inside for Finn.
You do have some funny names in the book: Honey, Dune, Bridie. What's your process for naming your characters?
It's very tortured. I will say I've been trying to get the name Bridie, which is short for Bridget, into a book forever. I grew up...
Let me tell you, spell check changes it to Birdie every time.
Yeah.
I have to change it back every time.
I have a friend who also grew up in an equally as Catholic, Irish, Italian kind of community that I did. And she said that one of her friends had read it and had never heard the name Bridie. And she said, imagine that degree of non-Irishness. So I love the name Bridie. Honey just kind of came to me. I just thought it would be funny to name this sort of brittle woman Honey. And then Dune, I knew that he was going to be named after Finn, and I was trying to think of something creative form of Junior. And I went into a Reddit thread, and someone said, we call our son Dune instead of Junior. And I was like, all right, I'll take that one. I have a terrible time naming characters. So it's maybe my least favorite thing to do.
When was the first time you saw the joy of sex?
Oh, well, I was probably 11 or 12, and I found it in my parents' bedroom on their bookshelf, and of course was horrified. But then I also thought, maybe they left this here for me, like as a instruction booklet. and then I thought, okay, well, that's good. It's here. I don't need it now, but I'll probably need it eventually. And that's like, it's good that I have it. But it was, that book is bonkers. So I think it scarred a lot of people. I've been out on the road talking about this book long enough to, everyone has a story about finding that book and their feelings about it. So.
How does Nina feel about the book?
I think the book scares Nina, but also shows her that something that she already knows about herself is true, and makes it impossible for her to stop knowing that about herself.
Explain a little bit more.
I think that Nina knows that that her unhappiness is because there's something that she doesn't know about her marriage,
right,
and something she doesn't understand, some wall she can't get past, and that she's sort of given up and become complacent as a mother and someone in the community. And then for whatever reason, I imagine it's the timing of when she gets that book, when her children are getting ready to leave the house, and she's looking down the road and seeing her and Sam in this house alone, and I think something cracks in her, and she can't ignore that eventuality, which is going to be tough.
Finn has a near-death experience. He has this massive heart attack. How do you think that brush with death changed him?
I think that that anyone who has to confront their mortality in an unexpected time and in an unexpected way, I think that changes you. I think it obviously depends on who you are and in terms of how that will change you. But I have certainly had enough friends who have had to face their mortality in unexpected and sudden and scary ways. And it really changes what you think is valuable in life and how you want to spend your time and where you want to put your focus. And I think it brings into focus what makes you happy.
Why can't Clara forgive her mom? Why can't she forgive Nina for trying to have a life of her own?
I just think Clara is definitely like many 17-year-olds, a narcissist and sees the world through the lens of how does this affect me. But I think she just was so deeply hurt and so angry. And so, I mean, she is stubborn, and she was unwilling to try and see her mother as having the scope of humanity, of being flawed, of having desires, all of that. And I think it's hard. I think that's a hard transition from being a child to being an adult who can look at your parents now that when you have a little knowledge of being an adult and say, oh my gosh, they went through all this stuff that's so hard for me. They had to go through that too. I remember understanding at some point, because my mom had me very young, that when I would, like, when she was my age, she had like 4 kids, and I maybe had one kid who I was struggling with, and just seeing her, like, it was just something went into focus in my brain, like seeing her so differently as this very, very young mother with all of these children, and just having compassion for her that I had never had, certainly as a teenager.
At one point, Nina says something to Clara that she can't let go of. She says, "I truly hope this is the last time you hurt yourself by exaggerating the importance of your presence." I know, right? Yeah. What's truthful about that statement?
It's true. I mean, but this is teenagers, right? Yep. So, and sometimes this is your children. Their lives are very big until they have to integrate into the world, as all of us do as adults. And you realize that your life isn't the big thing. The world is the big thing, and you're trying to find your place in it. And it's such a harsh thing for Nina to say, and for Clara to hear. But I can't imagine saying it. I can certainly imagine thinking it. And I guess I can imagine being so frustrated and so hurt that I would blurt it out, which I think is what happens. But yeah, there's a long tail of repercussions for that.
All I have under Dune is what's Dune's deal?
I don't know.
What's
He's just
Dune's
a guy.
deal?
He's like a guy. He's a guy who's gonna work in the family store and find a wife and have some kids and go to the club like his father. He's just one of those people who's never going to leave town.
Yeah. Honey is kind of a tough character to like.
Yes.
But you reveal more about her past later on in the book. Why did you want to include this as part of her background? Why did you want us to know what had happened to her?
Because I don't think that I didn't want Honey just to be a stereotype. And I think that people are the way they are for reasons. And that doesn't excuse their behavior, but sometimes it gives you, if you can open up your heart a little bit to understanding what's happened to someone, maybe you can at least have some perspective on their behavior. I just thought it was fun. I thought it was important to offer the reader a little something more of Honey other than her incredibly frustrating behavior in the sort of present of the book. And also to give her a moment when we move into the future to have this nice thing happen to her and to see her soften a teeny little bit.
You're listening to my conversation with author Cynthia Dupree Sweeney. Her new novel, Lake Effect, was our April Get Lit with All of It book club selection. We'll have more with Cynthia, plus audience questions after a quick break. This is All of It. You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Let's continue my conversation with author Cynthia Dupree Sweeney. Her new novel, Lake Effect, was our April Get Lit with All of It book club selection. I spoke with Cynthia earlier this week in front of a packed house at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. As usual, our audience had some great questions for our author. You'll hear some of those in just a minute. But first, here's more of my conversation with Cynthia Dupree Sweeney.
There's so much about food in this novel.
Yeah.
You have cooking, you have food styling, we have dieting, we have Weight Watchers, we have food poisoning. When did you know food was going to play a key role in this book?
Pretty early on, I knew that Nina, much like my mother and like many, many women in the 70s, was going to turn on the TV and see Julia Child and all of a sudden become a gourmet cook. Like my mom, you know, when we were younger, it was either it was either Italian food or it was like American food, and then all of a sudden we were having like beef bourguignon and coq au vin, and you know, everyone was coming to parties with elaborate puff pastry things, and I liked that for her, and then I liked food being a battleground for her and Clara, and also when I finished my previous book, my friend, the writer Ruman Alam, said to me, I think you have more to say about family and food. And so he just planted that little idea in my head. And I thought, yeah, I think this book is going to have some things to say about family and food. And so it does.
Let's go to the audience for questions.
I think that Fern is kind of the steady, almost unspoken, beating heart of the story, especially toward the back half and the very end. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what inspired her, particularly her role as a caregiver.
I think when I started writing Fern, I just immediately understood that she was a caregiver, that she was a caretaker, that she was somebody who had been put in the role of taking care of people against her will, but then took it on willingly. And I really felt like she was going to be critical to. She has a few very, very important moments in the book, and I just thought she was so strong and had such a sense of herself that she could carry those moments, and she could carry these broken people kind of to the end of their story where they needed to be. And I think some of the strongest people I know are caregivers, and I'm just thinking about this as I'm talking about it, but perhaps that this was a novel that was started during COVID, and having that experience of seeing how the caregivers in our lives are so important. I have a few nurses in my family, and I also sort of wanted to honor them by making Fern just like a real badass. So,
can you talk a little bit about your decision for them to go to the Dominican Republic and have the quickie divorce and like do it under cover of night?
Well, it was really driven by the fact that this is pre-no-fault divorce. So if you wanted a divorce and your spouse wouldn't grant you one, that could have gone on for years. And so for Nina, I think she felt like this was just going to rip the Band-Aid off and do it. She could have moved out of the house, but she didn't have any money. And that just would have become legally a very complicated thing. The reason that this divorce tourism existed, first in Mexico and then in the Dominican Republic, was because people didn't want to go live in Las Vegas for 6 weeks. So, they sat that up. The minute no-fault divorce kicked in, all these places just had to sort of shut down shop. But it's such a fascinating thing. And when I first came across it in my research, I couldn't actually believe it existed. And it does. And that's what people did. And so it was really a function of the legalities of the time.
You came on our show earlier this month, and I asked you for an Easter egg or something about the book that was very specific that you wanted readers to pay attention to. And you said that you were really proud of the last 75 pages of the book and that you had to dig deeper in yourself than you had in your previous novels to write that ending. Where did you have to go to do that?
I had to go to losing my mother, and under very different circumstances. But I had to go to the death of a parent, and to everything that brings up, and everything it allows, everything it opens up within a family when something like that happens. And I really wanted to. I knew probably halfway through the book that what I wanted to do was narrow the aperture until those last pages were Clara and her daughters and Fern, and that it was going to be these women in a room, hopefully giving someone forgiveness and a beautiful death, and at the same time allowing themselves to break open in some way that would carry them forward. So,
and my final question is, what do you like about writing families?
I mean, what's more interesting? I listened to your interview with Angela Flournoy, and I love the way she put it. You asked her about writing a multiple point of view, and she said, I like networks. And I like networks too. I like groups of friends. I like families, people who are, but families, you are connected to them not by choice. So you're born into this story that is someone else's story. You are given other characters to live out this story with. And you have no control over that. And you have to somehow figure out what part of that family narrative that you're born into and sometimes assigned. You're the smart one, the athletic one, you're the troublemaker. How much of that is true and how much of it is not, and how much you're going to accept and how much of it you're going to rewrite, and what that rewriting is going to do to the organism. So it's just endlessly fascinating to me.
That was my conversation with the April Get Lit with All of It author, Cynthia Dupree Sweeney. We spent the month reading her new novel, Lake Effect.